How many ways can you destroy a marriage before it even begins? When the courier handed me my wedding annulment papers, less than a week after our vows, I finally understood. One hotel room, one harmless conversation, and one secret I could never take back. Can you ever justify betraying someone on the night you promised forever, especially when your whole world is watching? The champagne bubbles had barely settled in my glass when I saw him across the reception hall. Eliot Ransom stood near the gift table, camera in hand, that familiar crooked smile playing at his lips as he photographed the floral arrangements. My heart lurched in a way that had nothing to do with wedding day nerves. "Araminta, darling, you look absolutely radiant," my mother Violet gushed, appearing at my elbow in a cloud of expensive perfume. The ceremony was perfection, simply perfection. I forced a smile, my eyes still tracking Eliot as he moved through the crowd. "Thank you, Mother. Everything went according to plan." Everything except him being here. I'd specifically told the wedding planner that Ransom photography was off the vendor list, yet here he was, apparently hired by someone else to capture candid moments at my reception. Lucas appeared beside me, handsome in his tailored tuxedo, his arm sliding around my waist with practiced ease. "Mrs. Redding," he murmured against my ear, "ready for our first dance?" Mrs. Redding. The name felt foreign on my tongue, like wearing someone else's clothes. "Of course," I replied, allowing him to lead me onto the dance floor. As we swayed to the string quartet's rendition of At Last, I caught glimpses of Eliot over Lucas's shoulder. He was watching us, his camera lowered, an unreadable expression on his face. 3 years. It had been 3 years since we'd spoken, since our explosive breakup that left me questioning everything I thought I wanted in life. "You seem distracted," Lucas observed, his voice gentle but concerned. "Everything all right?" "Just overwhelmed," I lied smoothly. "It's been such a long day." Lucas squeezed my hand. "Soon we'll be in our suite, just the two of us. I can't wait to start our life together, Araminta." Our life together. Safe, predictable Lucas with his engineering mind and 5-year plans. He'd courted me properly, proposed at the exact restaurant where we'd had our first date, planned a honeymoon to Tuscany because I'd mentioned once that I'd always wanted to see the vineyards. He was everything my parents approved of, everything that made sense on paper. So why did my pulse quicken every time I glimpsed Eliot's dark hair across the room? The reception continued in a blur of congratulations and small talk. I smiled until my cheeks ached, accepted kisses from relatives I barely knew, and pretended not to notice when Eliot disappeared sometime after the cake cutting. It wasn't until we were saying our final goodbyes that I felt the tap on my shoulder. "Congratulations, Minta." I turned to find Eliot standing behind me, using the nickname only he had ever called me. Up close, he looked exactly the same, those piercing green eyes, the stubble that was always perfectly imperfect, the way he carried himself, like he owned whatever room he walked into. "Eliot." My voice came out breathier than I intended. "I didn't realize you were working tonight." "Last-minute booking. Your cousin Bradley hired me." He glanced around, then stepped closer. "You look beautiful. Happy." "I am happy," I said quickly. Too quickly. He studied my face with the intensity I remembered, the way he used to look at me when he was trying to read my thoughts. "Are you?" "Of course I am. I just married a wonderful man." "Right, the engineer." There was something in his tone, not quite mockery, but close. Very sensible choice. Heat flared in my chest. "Lucas is a good man. He loves me." "I'm sure he does." Eliot's eyes never left mine. "But does he know you? Really know you?" The question hit like a physical blow. Because the truth was, Lucas knew the version of me I'd carefully constructed over the past 2 years. The responsible insurance processor, who wanted a stable life, who'd learned from past mistakes, who was ready to settle down. He didn't know about the restless nights when I stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was all there was. He didn't know about the poetry I still wrote in secret, or how I sometimes drove aimlessly through the city just to feel like I was going somewhere. "I should get back to my husband," I said, the word feeling strange in my mouth. "Of course." Eliot reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "In case you ever want to talk, about old times, or new ones." I stared at the card, my hand frozen halfway to taking it. "Araminta?" Lucas's voice behind me made me jump. "Ready to head up to the suite?" I turned to find him watching us, his expression politely curious but with something sharper underneath. "Lucas, this is Eliot Ransom, the photographer. Eliot, my husband, Lucas Redding." The men shook hands, Lucas's grip firm and professional, Eliot's more relaxed. "Beautiful ceremony," Eliot said. "You're a lucky man." "I know," Lucas replied simply, his arm sliding possessively around my waist. After Eliot melted back into the crowd, Lucas and I made our way to the elevator. The silence stretched between us as we rode up to the penthouse suite, thick with unspoken questions. "Old friend?" Lucas asked finally, as he slid the key card into the door. "Ex-boyfriend, actually. From a few years ago." I tried to keep my voice light. "Ancient history." Lucas nodded, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "I see." The suite was gorgeous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, champagne chilling in a silver bucket, rose petals scattered across the king-sized bed. It should have been romantic. Instead, I felt like I was suffocating. "I think I need some air," I said suddenly, moving toward the balcony doors. "Araminta." Lucas caught my hand. "What's wrong? You've been distant all evening." "Nothing's wrong. I'm just tired. It's been a long day." He studied my face with the same careful attention he brought to his blueprints. "Are you having second thoughts?" The direct question caught me off guard. "What? No, of course not. Because if you are, we can talk about it. We can work through whatever this is." That was so perfectly Lucas, logical, solution-oriented, willing to troubleshoot our marriage like a structural engineering problem. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. "I just need a few minutes to decompress," I said, pulling my hand free. "Maybe I'll go down to the bar, have a drink with the girls who are still here." "It's past midnight, Araminta. The reception ended an hour ago." "Then I'll just walk around, clear my head." Lucas's expression shifted from concern to something harder to read. "On our wedding night?" "It's not like we haven't—" I gestured vaguely toward the bedroom. We'd been living together for 6 months, had been intimate countless times. The wedding night held no mystery, no urgency. "Right," he said quietly. "Of course." I grabbed my clutch and headed for the door, pausing when he called my name. "Araminta, I love you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with expectation. "I love you too," I replied automatically, then slipped out before he could respond. In the elevator, I pulled out my phone and stared at Eliot's business card. Before I could second-guess myself, I typed out a text. "Are you still in the hotel?" His response came immediately. "Lobby bar. Couldn't sleep either." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was insane. I was a married woman now, had been for exactly 6 hours. I should go back upstairs, apologize to Lucas, and start our honeymoon properly. Instead, I typed, "Just need to talk, 5 minutes." Room 847, more private. The elevator doors opened on the lobby, and I hesitated. I could still turn around, go back to my husband, pretend this moment of weakness had never happened. But my feet carried me toward the front desk, where I heard myself asking for a room key. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that room is already occupied." "I know, I'm expected." The desk clerk looked confused, but handed over the key card after I showed my ID. "Will you be checking in as well?" "Just visiting," I said, then realized how that sounded. Business meeting. At 12:47 a.m. in my wedding dress. The clerk's expression remained professionally neutral, but I saw the judgment in her eyes. Room 847 was on the 8th floor, just 3 floors below the penthouse suite where my husband was waiting. I knocked softly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Eliot opened the door immediately, as if he'd been standing right behind it. He'd changed out of his photographer's attire into jeans and a black t-shirt, looking more like the man I'd once known. "You came," he said simply. "I shouldn't be here." "But you are." I stepped into the room, hyper-aware of the king bed dominating the space, the intimacy of being alone with him. I just wanted to talk, to get some closure, I guess. Closure. He closed the door behind me. "Is that what you call it?" "What else would I call it?" "Honesty, maybe, about what you really want." I turned to face him, my wedding dress rustling around my legs. "I know what I want. I married him, didn't I?" "You married safety, security, your mother's approval." Eliot moved closer, not touching but close enough that I could smell his familiar cologne. "But what do you want, Minta?" The question hung between us like a challenge. What did I want? I'd been so focused on what I should want, what made sense, what would make everyone happy, that I'd stopped asking myself that question. "I want—" I started, then stopped. "I don't know anymore." "Yes, you do." His voice was soft, hypnotic. "You've always known. You just convinced yourself it was wrong." My phone buzzed, a text from Lucas. "Everything okay? You've been gone a while." I stared at the message, guilt crashing over me in waves. What was I doing? This wasn't closure, this was betrayal. I was in a hotel room with my ex-boyfriend on my wedding night, lying to my husband about where I was. "I have to go," I said, backing toward the door. "Araminta, wait." "This was a mistake. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come here." But even as I said the words, I made no move to leave. Because despite everything, the guilt, the fear, the knowledge that this was wrong, I didn't want to go back to that suffocating suite and pretend to be the wife Lucas deserved. "Just talk to me," Eliot said. "That's all you wanted, right? To talk?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Then talk. Tell me how you've been. Tell me about your life." And somehow, impossibly, I found myself sitting on the edge of the bed, still in my wedding dress, talking to the man I'd never quite gotten over about the life I'd built without him. The conversation flowed like water, finding its level, natural and inevitable. We talked about his photography, my job at the insurance company, the places we'd traveled, the books we'd read. It felt like no time had passed at all, like we were still the couple who used to stay up until dawn discussing everything and nothing. "Do you remember that night in Portland?" Eliot asked, his voice soft with memory. "When we got caught in that thunderstorm and had to take shelter in that all-night diner?" I smiled despite myself. The waitress thought we were crazy, sitting there soaking wet, laughing about everything. "You ordered pie for breakfast." "Chocolate cream. You said it was the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen." I wasn't talking about the pie. The words hung between us, loaded with history and possibility. I should have left then, should have stood up, walked out, gone back to my husband and my real life. Instead, I stayed. We talked until the sky outside the window began to lighten, until I realized with a start that I'd been gone for over 5 hours. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Lucas, each one making my stomach clench tighter. "I have to go," I said, finally finding the strength to stand. "He'll be worried sick." "Will you tell him?" The question stopped me cold. Tell him what? We just talked. Did we? I looked at Eliot, really looked at him, and saw the truth reflected in his eyes. We hadn't just talked. We'd reconnected, remembered what we used to be, opened a door that should have stayed closed. Nothing physical had happened, but in some ways that made it worse. This had been emotional infidelity of the highest order. "Nothing happened," I said firmly, as much to myself as to him. "If you say so." I headed for the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. "Eliot, this can't happen again." I know. But the way he said it, the small smile playing at his lips, made me think he didn't believe it any more than I did. I slipped out of the room and took the elevator back up to the penthouse, my mind racing with explanations and excuses. I'd been with friends, I'd needed air, I'd gone for a walk, anything but the truth. The suite was dark when I entered, but I could see Lucas sitting in the chair by the window, still in his tuxedo pants and white shirt, now wrinkled and untucked. He looked up when I came in, and the expression on his face made my blood freeze. "Where were you?" "I told you I needed some air. I went for a walk." "For 5 hours? In your wedding dress?" I forced a laugh. "Time got away from me. I ran into some friends from college. We went to that all-night diner on 5th Street. I called the diner. They said they hadn't seen you." The lie died in my throat. Of course he'd called. Lucas was nothing if not thorough. "Araminta," his voice was deadly quiet, "I'm going to ask you one more time. Where were you?" I opened my mouth to lie again, to spin some story that would explain away the last 5 hours. But then I saw his phone on the table beside him, the screen lit up with a notification. A text message from Eliot's number. "Thank you for tonight. It meant everything to me." The blood drained from my face as I realized what this looked like, what it was. "Lucas, I can explain. Can you?" He stood slowly, his movements careful and controlled. "Please, explain to me why my wife spent our wedding night in a hotel room with her ex-boyfriend." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Lucas stood by the window, the morning light casting harsh shadows across his face, while I remained frozen by the door in my wrinkled wedding dress. "It's not what you think," I said finally, the words sounding hollow even to my ears. "Then tell me what it is." His voice was unnaturally calm, which somehow made it worse than if he'd been shouting. "Tell me why you left our wedding suite to spend the night with Eliot Ransom." "We just talked, that's all. I needed closure." "Closure." The word came out flat, emotionless. "On our wedding night." "Lucas, please, you have to understand." "What I understand," he interrupted, "is that I've been sitting here for 5 hours wondering if my wife was dead in a ditch somewhere. I called hospitals, Araminta. I was about to call the police." The guilt hit me like a physical blow. In my selfish pursuit of whatever I thought I needed from Eliot, I hadn't considered what my absence would do to Lucas. The worry, the fear, the humiliation of being abandoned on our wedding night. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I should have called." "Yes, you should have." He moved to the dresser and began removing his cufflinks with mechanical precision. "But that's not really the issue, is it? Nothing happened between us. I swear to you, nothing physical." "Don't." The sharpness in his voice made me flinch. "Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this is about sex. You think I don't know you well enough to understand what this really was?" I stared at him, surprised by the insight. Lucas was many things, but I'd never given him credit for emotional intelligence. "You went to him because you're having doubts," he continued, his voice growing quieter with each word. "About me, about us, about the choice you made 6 hours ago. That's not true, isn't it?" He turned to face me fully. "Be honest, Araminta. For once in this relationship, be completely honest. Are you in love with me?" The question hung in the air like a blade. I opened my mouth to give him the answer he wanted, the answer I'd been giving for 2 years, but the words wouldn't come. "I care about you," I said instead. "I respect you. I want to build a life with you." "That's not what I asked." Tears burned behind my eyes. "Love means different things to different people." "That's a no, then." The finality in his voice made my chest tight. "Lucas, please don't do this. We can work through this. Couples have problems. They go to counseling." "Problems?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Araminta, you spent our wedding night with another man. That's not a problem. That's a choice." I made a mistake. I was confused, overwhelmed. "You were honest," he said simply. "Maybe for the first time since I've known you." The words hit harder than any accusation could have, because he was right. I had been honest last night, more honest than I'd been in years. Sitting in that hotel room with Eliot, talking until dawn, I'd felt like myself again. Not the carefully constructed version I'd built for Lucas, but the real me, messy and complicated and uncertain about everything. "I'm going to stay at my mother's for a few days," Lucas said, pulling a suitcase from the closet. "Give us both some time to think. Don't do this, don't leave. We just got married." "Did we?" He paused in his packing. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you married me while you were still in love with someone else." "I'm not. Araminta." His voice was gentle now, almost pitying. "Stop lying. To me, to yourself. It's not helping anyone." He finished packing in silence while I stood there in my wedding dress, watching my marriage dissolve before it had even truly begun. When he reached the door, he paused. "For what it's worth," he said without turning around, "I really did love you. I thought maybe that would be enough." Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the honeymoon suite that now felt like a mausoleum. I spent the rest of the morning in a daze, mechanically removing my wedding dress, showering, trying to process what had just happened. By noon, my phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from family members who'd heard that Lucas had moved back to his mother's house. The first call was from my mother. "Araminta Redding, what on earth is going on? Margaret Redding just called me in absolute hysterics saying Lucas came home this morning with a suitcase." I closed my eyes, dreading this conversation. "We had a fight, Mother. Newlywed jitters." "A fight? What kind of fight sends a man home to his mother on his wedding night?" "It's complicated." "Uncomplicate it, right now." I could picture Violet pacing around her pristine living room, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her phone case. Image was everything to my mother, and a failed marriage less than 24 hours after the ceremony was a social catastrophe of epic proportions. "I ran into Eliot last night," I said carefully. "We talked. Lucas got the wrong idea." "Eliot? Your ex-boyfriend Eliot, the photographer. He was working the wedding. I didn't know." "And you talked to him on your wedding night?" "Mother, it wasn't like that." "What was it like then? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've just humiliated yourself, your husband, and both our families in one fell swoop." The accusation stung because it was true. "I made a mistake. I'll fix it." "You'd better. Do you have any idea what this looks like? The gossip that's already starting. Margaret told me she's fielding calls from relatives asking if the marriage is already over." After I hung up with my mother, the calls kept coming. My father, his voice heavy with disappointment. Lucas's sister Naomi, alternating between fury and confusion. Friends who'd been at the wedding, fishing for details about why the groom had left the hotel alone. By evening, I was exhausted from maintaining the same story. We'd had a fight. It was a misunderstanding. Everything would be fine. But with each conversation, I could feel the skepticism growing, the whispers starting. It wasn't until I went back to work on Tuesday that I realized how bad things had gotten. "Araminta!" My co-worker Jessica practically pounced on me the moment I walked into the office. "Oh my God, we've been dying to hear from you. How was the honeymoon?" "We postponed it," I said, settling at my desk and hoping to avoid further questions. "Postponed it? Why?" "Family emergency." But Jessica wasn't easily deterred. "That's so weird because my cousin works at the Marriott downtown, and she said she saw Lucas leaving by himself on Sunday morning, in the same clothes from the night before." My blood went cold. I'm sure she was mistaken. She was pretty sure it was him. She said he looked really upset. I could feel the attention of the entire office focusing on our conversation. In a building full of insurance processors, gossip spread faster than wildfire, and everyone was suddenly very interested in my honeymoon story. "Like I said, family emergency," I repeated, turning to my computer screen in hopes of ending the discussion. But the damage was done. Throughout the day, I caught whispered conversations that stopped when I approached, meaningful glances exchanged over cubicle walls. By lunch, Someone had apparently done some digging on social media because Jessica approached my desk again with her phone in hand. "So this is interesting," she said, showing me the screen. "Naomi Redding posted this yesterday." It was a photo from the wedding reception, showing Lucas and me dancing, with the caption, "When you realize some people aren't ready for forever. Praying for my brother during this difficult time." No truth, no family, no disappointed. My stomach dropped. She's just being dramatic. And then there's this one from this morning. Another post, this time a meme about people who make promises they can't keep, with the hashtag #JudgeWeddingFail. "Jessica, I really don't want to discuss—" "Oh, and look at this." She scrolled to another post. "Someone tagged you in this." It was a photo I didn't recognize, clearly taken at the wedding reception. It showed me talking to Eliot by the gift table, both of us leaning in close, my hand on his arm. The body language was unmistakably intimate. The caption read, "When the bride is more interested in the photographer than the groom. Awkward." "Oh, drama. Jarger wedding. Rah, yikes." "Who posted this?" I demanded. "Anonymous account, but it's been shared like 50 times already." I spent my lunch break in my car, frantically calling Lucas. His phone went straight to voicemail every time. "Lucas, please call me back. People are posting things online, making assumptions. We need to talk about how to handle this." But he didn't call back. And when I drove by his mother's house that evening, his car was in the driveway, but no one answered the door. That night, lying alone in the bed Lucas and I had shared for 6 months, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not just for my marriage, which was clearly falling apart, but for the mess I'd made of everything. The hurt I'd caused Lucas, the disappointment I'd brought to my family, the whispers and speculation that were spreading through our social circle like poison. I told myself that talking to Eliot was about closure, about resolving old feelings so I could move forward with my new life. But the truth was more complicated and far more selfish. I'd wanted to feel special again, desired, interesting. I'd wanted to remember what it felt like to be with someone who saw me as more than just a safe choice. And in pursuing that feeling, I'd destroyed the life I'd spent 2 years building. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the posts online. Hope you're okay. E." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. Whatever I'd been looking for in that hotel room, it wasn't worth what I was losing. But by then, it was already too late. By Thursday morning, I couldn't pretend anymore that this would blow over quietly. The anonymous social media posts had multiplied overnight, each one more damaging than the last. Someone had apparently been very busy documenting my wedding reception because photos I'd never seen before were surfacing with alarming frequency. There was one of me checking my phone during the cake cutting, another of me scanning the crowd during my father's speech, and most damning of all, a timestamp screenshot showing me leaving the hotel at 12:43 a.m. and not returning until 5:52 a.m. "How is this even possible?" I demanded, calling my mother from my office bathroom where no one could overhear. "Who takes pictures of people leaving hotels?" "Security cameras, darling," Violet replied, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Hotels have security cameras everywhere. Someone clearly has access to the footage. But who would do this? Who would go to this much trouble?" "I have my suspicions," she said darkly. "Margaret Redding has been very vocal about her feelings regarding your behavior, and her daughter Naomi works in social media marketing." The implication hit me like a slap. "You think they're behind this?" "I think they're hurt and angry, and they want the world to know that their son is the victim here, which, frankly, he is." Even my own mother was taking Lucas's side now. "Mother, I thought you supported me." "I support you when you're right, Araminta. But this is indefensible. You humiliated that poor boy in front of everyone who matters to him. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen? You spent your wedding night with another man. How exactly did you think that would play out?" I didn't have an answer for that. In the moment, sitting in that hotel room with Eliot, I hadn't been thinking about consequences or appearances. I'd only been thinking about how good it felt to be myself again, to have someone look at me like I was fascinating instead of just suitable. I need to do damage control, I said. Maybe if I post something explaining. Absolutely not, Violet interrupted sharply. Do not post anything on social media. You'll only make it worse. But I was desperate. When I got home that evening, I sat down at my computer and crafted what I thought was a mature, reasonable explanation of events. I want to address the rumors circulating about my marriage. Like many couples, Lucas and I are working through some challenges as we begin this new chapter of our lives. Marriage is about growth, communication, and sometimes that means having difficult conversations about the past so we can move forward together. I ask for privacy during this time as we focus on building our future. Love isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for. Modern marriage will shine growth and your privacy. I posted it to Facebook and Instagram simultaneously, then sat back feeling like I'd handled the situation with grace and maturity. The response was immediate and brutal. Within an hour, the post had dozens of comments, most of them variations of, "What about your husband?" and "This is so disrespectful." Someone had screenshotted my post and shared it with the caption, "When you try to make cheating sound enlightened." But the worst part was the comment from Margaret Redding herself. "Some challenges are choices. My son deserves better than someone who thinks betrayal is personal growth." The comment had 43 likes. I deleted the post immediately, but the screenshots were already circulating. By Friday morning, someone had created a compilation image showing my wedding photos, alongside the hotel timestamps and my deleted Facebook post, with the title, "The Anatomy of a Wedding Day Disaster." "You need to take a few days off," my supervisor Carol told me when she called me into her office. "This situation is becoming a distraction for the entire department." "I haven't done anything wrong at work," I protested. "No, but your personal life is affecting your ability to focus, and it's affecting your coworkers too. Everyone's talking about it instead of working." The humiliation was complete. I was being sent home from my job because my marriage was such a spectacular failure that it had become office entertainment. I spent the weekend hiding in my apartment, ordering takeout and avoiding my phone. But Monday brought a new development that made everything worse. Lucas had hired a lawyer. The call came from a law firm downtown. "Mrs. Redding, this is Patricia Chen from Morrison, Walsh and Associates. I'm calling on behalf of your husband regarding some legal matters that need to be addressed." "Legal matters?" "Mr. Redding would like to meet with you to discuss the terms of a potential separation agreement. Would you be available to come in this week?" The words hit me like ice water. Separation agreement? We haven't even been married a week. "I understand this is difficult, Mrs. Redding, but given the circumstances, Mr. Redding feels it's important to establish clear boundaries and expectations moving forward." "What circumstances? What has he told you?" "I think it would be best if we discussed this in person. Would Thursday at 2:00 work for you?" I hung up the phone in shock. Lucas was serious about this. He wasn't just taking time to cool off or making a point about my behavior. He was actually considering ending our marriage. That afternoon, I drove to his mother's house and rang the doorbell repeatedly until Margaret finally answered. "I want to see my husband," I said. "He doesn't want to see you," Margaret replied coolly. "And frankly, I don't blame him." "Margaret, please. I know you're angry, but this is between Lucas and me." "Is it? Because from what I can see, you've made it everyone's business." She stepped onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind her. "Do you have any idea what you've done to him? He's barely eating, barely sleeping. He's humiliated, Araminta. His friends are asking questions he can't answer because he doesn't understand what happened himself. I can explain. You can explain why you left your wedding reception to spend the night with your ex-boyfriend? Please, I'd love to hear this explanation." When I didn't respond immediately, she shook her head in disgust. You know what the worst part is? Lucas defended you. Even after everything, he told people it was just a misunderstanding, that you were overwhelmed. He was trying to protect your reputation even while you were destroying his. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. And now my son has to live with the consequences of your selfishness. She went back inside, leaving me standing on the porch like a door-to-door salesman who'd been dismissed. That night I called Eliot for the first time since the wedding. "Minta," he said, his voice warm with surprise. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "This is all falling apart," I said without preamble. "Lucas hired a lawyer. People are posting things online. I think I'm going to lose my job." "I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted." "Isn't it?" The question surprised me as much as it did him. Sometimes I wonder if I sabotaged this on purpose, if I wanted an excuse to blow up my life. "Did you?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Had I gone to that hotel room knowing it would destroy my marriage? Had I been looking for a way out that would make Lucas the one to leave, so I wouldn't have to be the bad guy? "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe." "What do you want now?" "I want to undo it all. I want to go back to Sunday morning and make different choices." "But you can't." "No, I can't." "So what are you going to do?" It was a good question. What was I going to do? I could fight for my marriage, beg Lucas to forgive me, go to counseling and try to rebuild what I'd broken. Or I could accept that I'd made my choice that night in the hotel room and live with the consequences. "I don't know that either," I said. "Well, when you figure it out, call me. I'll be here." After I hung up, I sat in the dark thinking about choices and consequences, about the difference between what we want and what we think we should want. I'd married Lucas because it made sense, because he was good for me, because everyone approved of the match. But I'd never married him because I couldn't imagine my life without him. And maybe, in the end, that was the real truth that everyone could see but me. Thursday's meeting with Lucas's lawyer was worse than I'd imagined. Patricia Chen was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who treated me with the kind of professional courtesy reserved for mildly distasteful but necessary business. "Mr. Redding is prepared to offer a very generous settlement," she began, sliding a folder across the mahogany conference table. "Given the brief duration of the marriage and the circumstances surrounding its dissolution." I opened the folder with trembling hands. The papers inside were dense with legal language, but the key points were clear enough. Lucas wanted an annulment on grounds of fraud. He was claiming that I had entered the marriage under false pretenses, concealing my ongoing feelings for another man. "Fraud?" I looked up at Patricia in shock. "That's ridiculous. I never lied to him." "Didn't you?" She consulted her notes. "My client states that you repeatedly assured him you were over your previous relationship, that you wanted to build a future with him. Yet less than 6 hours after your wedding ceremony, you were in a hotel room with your ex-boyfriend. We just talked. For 5 hours. In a hotel room. On your wedding night." Patricia's tone remained neutral, but the judgment was clear. "Mrs. Redding, I'm going to be frank with you. The evidence doesn't look good. We have security footage, witness statements, and digital communications that paint a very clear picture of what happened." "What digital communications?" She pulled out another folder, this one thicker than the first. "Text messages between you and Mr. Ransom, dating back several months before your wedding." My blood went cold. "That's impossible. I haven't been in contact with Eliot since March 15th, Patricia interrupted, reading from a document. "When you texted him, saw your photo in the gallery downtown. Beautiful work as always." He replied, "Thanks, Minta. Hope you're well." You responded, "Getting married in June. Crazy, right?" His reply was, "Congratulations. He's a lucky guy." The conversation came flooding back to me. I'd been walking past a photography gallery and seen one of Eliot's landscapes in the window. The text had been innocent, just a friendly acknowledgement of his work. But seeing it laid out in legal documents, it looked like something else entirely. "That was just..." There are 17 more exchanges, Patricia continued, including one from 3 weeks before your wedding, where you told him you were having doubts about everything, and he replied that you deserved to be with someone who really sees you. I remembered that conversation too. I'd been having a particularly bad day, feeling suffocated by wedding planning and Lucas's methodical approach to everything. The text to Eliot had been impulsive, a moment of weakness, but I'd never thought of it as building toward anything. Mrs. Redding, my client is prepared to be very reasonable about this. He doesn't want to drag this through the courts or create more public spectacle than necessary. But he also won't be taken advantage of. What does he want? An uncontested annulment. You keep your personal belongings and any gifts given specifically to you. He keeps the house, the cars, and all joint accounts, no alimony, no ongoing financial obligations. And if I don't agree? Patricia's smile was razor-sharp. Then we go to court, and all of this becomes public record. The text messages, the security footage, the witness statements from hotel staff about your behavior that night. Is that really what you want? I stared at the papers, feeling trapped. Lucas held all the cards, and we both knew it. He had evidence, witnesses, and most importantly, he had the moral high ground. I was the cheating wife, the woman who'd abandoned her husband on their wedding night. No judge in the world would side with me. I need time to think about this. Of course, but don't take too long. Mr. Redding would like to resolve this quickly and quietly. I left the law office feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The elevator ride down seemed to take forever, and when the doors opened in the lobby, I nearly collided with someone waiting to get on. Araminta. I looked up to find David Chen, one of Lucas's college friends, staring at me with barely concealed disdain. David. Hi. I heard about everything. His voice was cold. I have to say, I'm disappointed. I thought you were better than that. It's not what it looks like. Isn't it? Because it looks like you cheated on one of the best guys I know, on your wedding night. The accusation hung in the air between us. David had been at our wedding, had given a toast about Lucas being the most loyal person he'd ever met. Now he was looking at me like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. Lucas is devastated, he continued. You know that, right? He really loved you. We all thought you were perfect for him. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to return a phone call. This was a choice. A series of choices that hurt someone who never did anything but love you. He got on the elevator without another word, leaving me standing in the lobby, feeling like everyone was staring at me, which, it turned out, they were. Excuse me, are you Araminta Vane? I turned to find a young woman with a phone pointed at me. I'm sorry. You're the woman from the wedding photos, right? The one who left her husband for her ex-boyfriend. I didn't... Can you comment on the rumors that you've been having an affair for months? No comment, I said, pushing past her toward the exit. What about the reports that your husband is seeking an annulment? I made it to my car before she could ask any more questions, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. Someone had recognized me from the photos circulating online. I was becoming a local cautionary tale, the woman who'd destroyed her marriage before the honeymoon. That evening, my phone rang constantly with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. When I finally answered one, thinking it might be Lucas, a stranger's voice greeted me. Is this the cheating bride? I saw your story online and I just wanted to say... I hung up immediately and turned off my phone, but the damage was spreading beyond anonymous phone calls. The next morning, I woke up to find that someone had created a fake Facebook profile using my wedding photos and was posting updates about my journey of self-discovery and breaking free from societal expectations. The posts were clearly satirical, designed to make me look even more selfish and delusional than I already did. You need to get a lawyer, my father told me when I called him in tears. This is harassment. From who? I don't even know who's doing this. It doesn't matter. You need legal protection. But when I called 3 different law firms, none of them wanted to take my case. Too much public attention, one lawyer told me, not good for our reputation. I was toxic, untouchable. The woman who'd betrayed America's sweetheart on their wedding night. The final blow came on Friday when I returned to work, hoping that getting back to my normal routine would help me feel human again. Carol was waiting for me at my desk with a box. "I'm sorry, Araminta, I really am, but we have to let you go." "What? Why?" "The company's been getting calls, complaints about employing someone of questionable character, and yesterday someone posted our office address online with a suggestion that people call and express their feelings about your behavior. You're firing me because of my personal life? I'm letting you go because your personal life is affecting our business. I'm sorry. I wish there was another way." I packed my things in silence while my former co-workers watched from their cubicles. Some looked sympathetic, others judgmental, but all of them looked relieved that they weren't in my shoes. As I carried my box to the elevator, Jessica approached me one last time. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I think people are being too harsh. Everyone makes mistakes." "Thank you," I whispered, "but maybe next time, don't make them on your wedding night in front of 300 people. The elevator doors closed on her words, and I realized that this was my life now. I was the cautionary tale, the example of what happens when you follow your heart instead of your head. I'd lost my husband, my job, my reputation, and most of my friends. And the worst part was, I'd done it all to myself. By the following Monday, I'd hit rock bottom. The annulment papers sat on my kitchen table like a death sentence, while my laptop displayed a job search that had yielded exactly 0 responses. Apparently, being the subject of a viral cheating scandal wasn't great for one's employment prospects. I'd spent the weekend crafting what I thought was a dignified response to the situation. A carefully worded Facebook post that would set the record straight once and for all. I want to address the false narratives circulating about my marriage and my character. The truth is that Lucas and I had fundamental incompatibilities that we tried to work through. My conversation with my former partner was an attempt to gain clarity about my feelings before committing to a life that wouldn't be fair to either of us. While the timing was unfortunate, I refused to apologize for choosing honesty over living a lie. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is admit when something isn't working, even if it means disappointing people who want you to fit into their narrow definition of what a wife should be. I'm focusing on my own growth and healing, and I ask that people respect my journey. Authenticity, down self-care, women's empowerment, down growth. I posted it at 9 a.m. and watched the responses pour in. They were not what I'd hoped for. "This is the most narcissistic thing I've ever read," commented someone I'd gone to high school with. "My journey? Girl, you cheated on your husband on your wedding night. That's not a journey, that's just being a terrible person," wrote another. "Imagine being this delusional," was accompanied by a crying, laughing emoji. But the comment that cut deepest came from Lucas himself. "I never asked you to live a lie, Araminta. I asked you to be honest with me. There's a difference." Within hours, screenshots of my post were circulating on Twitter with increasingly creative commentary. Someone had created a meme using my wedding photo with the caption, "When you're so enlightened, you cheat on your wedding night." Another showed a stock photo of a woman meditating with the text, "Finding yourself in your ex's hotel room. A modern love story." I deleted the post, but it was too late. The internet had already decided that I was either completely delusional or a master manipulator trying to rewrite history. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house, desperate for some kind of support. "Oh, Araminta," my mother said when she opened the door. She looked exhausted, older than I'd ever seen her. "What have you done now?" I was trying to explain. "You were trying to justify the unjustifiable," my father interrupted from the living room. Harold Vane was usually the gentler of my parents, but his voice was sharp with disappointment. That post made you sound like a sociopath. I'm not a sociopath. I'm a woman who made a difficult choice. You're a woman who destroyed her marriage for attention, Violet snapped. And now you're destroying our family's reputation with your ridiculous attempts at damage control. Our family's reputation? Do you think this only affects you? Margaret Redding has been telling everyone who'll listen that we raised a daughter with no moral compass. The country club is buzzing with gossip. I can't show my face at bridge club. I stared at my mother, finally understanding that this had never been about my happiness or well-being. It was about appearances, about what people would think, about how my choices reflected on the Vane family name. I'm sorry my personal crisis is inconvenient for your social calendar, I said. Don't you dare take that tone with me, Violet shot back. I'm not the one who threw away a perfectly good marriage for some fantasy about true love. Maybe it wasn't as perfect as you thought. Lucas Redding is a good man from a good family. He has a stable career, no criminal record, no addiction problems. He wanted to give you a comfortable life and children and security. What more could you possibly want? I wanted to feel alive, I said quietly. I wanted to feel like myself. And how's that working out for you? She asked acidly. Are you feeling alive now that you're unemployed and about to be divorced? The cruelty in her voice made me flinch. This was my mother, the woman who was supposed to love me unconditionally, and she was speaking to me like I was a stranger who'd disappointed her. I think you should leave, my father said quietly, until you're ready to take responsibility for what you've done and stop trying to blame everyone else. I left my childhood home feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. That evening, I called Eliot. I need to see you, I said when he answered. Minta, I don't think that's a good idea. Things are pretty intense right now. Please, just for an hour. I need to talk to someone who doesn't think I'm a monster. There was a long pause. Okay, but not at a hotel. Meet me at Riverside Park by the fountain. 1 hour. I found him sitting on a bench, camera around his neck like always. He looked up when I approached, and I saw something in his expression that I hadn't expected. Guilt. You look terrible, he said gently. Thanks. That's exactly what every woman wants to hear. Minta, I'm sorry. I never meant for things to get this bad for you. It's not your fault. I made the choice to come to your room that night. Yeah, but I encouraged it. I knew you were married, knew you were confused, and I let you come anyway because... He trailed off. Because what? Because I wanted to see you. Because I missed you. Because I thought maybe we could pick up where we left off. The honesty was refreshing after days of legal doublespeak and family recriminations. And now I think we're both paying the price for wanting something we can't have. I've lost everything, Eliot. My marriage, my job, my family. People I don't even know are calling me a whore on the internet. I know, I've seen some of it. Do you regret it? That night? He was quiet for a long time. I regret the timing. I regret the pain it's caused you. But I don't regret getting to talk to you again, getting to remember what we had. What we had was 3 years ago. We're different people now. Are we? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the same man I'd fallen in love with in college. Passionate, artistic, living life on his own terms without worrying about what other people thought. Everything Lucas wasn't. I don't know who I am anymore, I admitted. You're the same person you always were. You just forgot for a while. The person I always was destroyed her life in one night. The person you always were was honest about what she wanted, even when it was inconvenient. We sat in silence as the sun set over the park. Families walked by with their children, couples held hands on evening strolls, joggers passed us with focused determination. Normal people living normal lives, not sitting on benches discussing the wreckage of a marriage that had lasted less than a week. What are you going to do? Eliot asked finally. Sign the annulment papers, I guess. Try to find a job, figure out how to rebuild my life. And us? The question hung in the air between us. Was there an us? Had there ever been, really, or was this all just nostalgia and bad timing? I don't know if there can be an us, I said finally. Not after this. Too much damage. Too much baggage. He nodded, looking disappointed but not surprised. I understand. I should go. Minta? He caught my hand as I stood. For what it's worth, I think you're brave. It takes courage to choose authenticity over comfort. Is that what I did? Isn't it? I walked back to my car thinking about his words. Was I brave, or was I just selfish? Was choosing authenticity worth the price I'd paid? Or was I just telling myself that to make the pain more bearable? I didn't have answers to those questions. All I knew was that in 3 days, I'd either sign those annulment papers or face a public court battle that would make the last week look like a minor inconvenience. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I wasn't sure which option scared me more. The final blow came not from Lucas or his lawyer, but from someone I'd never expected, my own cousin Bradley, who'd hired Eliot to photograph the wedding. I'm sorry, Araminta, he said when he called Tuesday morning, but I thought you should know before you see it online. See what online? I gave an interview to that blogger, Sarah Chen, you know, the one who writes about local scandals. She's been calling everyone who was at the wedding, trying to get the full story. My blood went cold. What did you tell her? The truth, about how you were acting strange all night, how you kept looking around like you were searching for someone. About the conversation I saw you having with the photographer by the gift table. Bradley, you were my family. You were supposed to protect me. I was protecting myself. Sarah said she was going to write the story with or without my input, and I didn't want her making up lies about my involvement. Your involvement? I'm the one who hired Ransom Photography. People are saying I did it on purpose, that I was helping you orchestrate some kind of affair. My wife is furious. Her family thinks I'm part of some conspiracy. So now I wasn't just the cheating bride, I was the mastermind behind an elaborate plot to destroy my own wedding. The narrative was growing more dramatic by the day. The article goes live tomorrow, Bradley continued. Sarah said she has security footage, witness statements, even text messages between you and the photographer. She's calling it the wedding night that broke the internet. I hung up and immediately called Patricia Chen's office. I want to sign the papers, I told her assistant, today, right now. Mrs. Redding, are you sure? Once you sign, there's no going back. I'm sure. But even that small mercy was denied to me. When I arrived at the law office an hour later, Patricia informed me that there had been a development. Mr. Redding has decided to withdraw the annulment petition, she said, her expression unreadable. What? Why? He's decided to file for divorce instead, on grounds of adultery. The words hit me like a physical blow. But nothing physical happened between Eliot and me. Adultery isn't just physical, Mrs. Redding. Emotional infidelity, abandonment of marital duties, public humiliation of a spouse, all of these can constitute grounds for divorce in this state. But a divorce will take longer. It'll be more public. Patricia's smile was sharp. Yes, it will. I stared at her, finally understanding. He wants to punish me. He wants justice. There's a difference. What does this mean for me? It means everything comes out in court. The text messages, the security footage, witness testimony about your behavior that night. It means a judge will decide who was at fault for the breakdown of this marriage, and that decision will be public record. And if I'm found at fault, you could be liable for his legal fees. You could lose any claim to marital assets. And most importantly, it will be documented forever that you were the cause of this marriage's failure. I left the law office in a daze. Lucas wasn't just leaving me, he was destroying me. Systematically, methodically, with the same careful attention to detail he brought to his engineering projects. That evening, Sarah Chen's article went live. The wedding night that broke the internet, How one bride's search for closure became a social media cautionary tale. The piece was devastating. Sarah had interviewed hotel staff who described my erratic behavior and obvious distress on the night of the wedding. She'd spoken to wedding guests who'd noticed my inappropriate attention to the photographer. She'd even tracked down my college roommate, who shared stories about my tumultuous relationship with Eliot and how I'd never really gotten over him. But the worst part was the timeline Sarah had constructed, using security footage timestamps, cell phone records, and witness statements to create a minute-by-minute account of my wedding night betrayal. 11:47 p.m. Araminta Redding leaves the penthouse suite, telling her husband she needs air. 11:52 p.m. Hotel cameras capture her in the lobby, visibly agitated, making a phone call. 12:15 a.m. She approaches the front desk, requesting a room key for room 847, 12:18 a.m. She enters room 847, where photographer Eliot Ransom has been staying 5:52 a.m. She exits room 847 and returns to the penthouse suite 6:15 a.m. Lucas Redding is seen leaving the hotel alone, carrying a suitcase. The article included photos I'd never seen before. Security camera stills showing me in the lobby in my wedding dress, looking furtive and guilty. There was even a photo of the hotel registry, showing that I'd been added as an authorized guest for Eliot's room. The comment section was a bloodbath. "This is the most selfish thing I've ever read. That poor man. She planned this. No one accidentally ends up in their ex's hotel room for 6 hours. I feel so bad for the husband. He seems like such a nice guy, and she humiliated him in front of everyone. Why did she even get married if she was still in love with someone else?" By Thursday morning, the article had been shared over 10,000 times. Someone had created a hashtag, Neusch Wedding Night Cheater, that was trending locally. My wedding photos were being used as memes, my face associated with betrayal and selfishness. I couldn't leave my apartment without being recognized. I couldn't go online without seeing my story dissected by strangers. I couldn't even order food delivery without worrying that the driver would recognize my name and address. The final humiliation came Friday afternoon when a courier arrived with a thick envelope. Inside were divorce papers, but also something I hadn't expected: a detailed financial accounting of our brief marriage. Lucas was seeking reimbursement for the entire cost of the wedding, $47,000, plus legal fees, plus damages for emotional distress and public humiliation. The papers also included a proposed settlement that would leave me with essentially nothing. No claim to the house we'd shared, no access to our joint accounts, no alimony despite my current unemployment. Attached was a note in Lucas's careful handwriting. "Araminta, you said you wanted authenticity over comfort. I hope you find what you're looking for. This is the last communication you'll receive from me directly. All future contact should go through my attorney. Lucas." I sat in my empty apartment, surrounded by the wreckage of my life, and finally understood the full scope of what I'd lost. It wasn't just a marriage or a job or a reputation. It was the future I'd spent 2 years building, the security I'd taken for granted, the respect of everyone who'd ever mattered to me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the article. "I'm sorry this got so out of hand. I never wanted this for you. E." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Don't contact me again. We've done enough damage." Then I blocked his number and sat in the growing darkness, wondering how 5 hours in a hotel room had managed to destroy an entire life. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd gone to Eliot that night seeking authenticity, looking for the real me that I'd buried under 2 years of being the perfect girlfriend and fiancé. And I'd found her, the selfish, impulsive woman who chose her own desires over everyone else's feelings. Maybe that was who I really was. Maybe Lucas was better off without me, and maybe I deserved everything that was happening. The divorce papers lay on my coffee table like an indictment, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I had no fight left in me. I picked up a pen and signed my name on every line that required it, officially ending a marriage that had lasted 6 days and cost me everything I'd ever thought I wanted. The next morning, I mailed the papers back to Patricia Chen's office with a note. I agree to all terms. I just want this to be over. 3 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Lucas got everything he'd asked for, including a judgment that I was solely responsible for the marriage's failure. The local newspaper ran a small item about the case, noting that it was believed to be the shortest marriage in county history. I never saw Lucas again. I heard through mutual friends that he'd moved to another city, taken a job with a firm there, started over somewhere. His name wasn't associated with the woman who'd betrayed him on their wedding night. I moved back in with my parents temporarily, took a job at a small insurance office in a neighboring town where no one knew my story, and slowly began to rebuild my life. But I never forgot the lesson I'd learned. Some choices can't be undone, some damage can't be repaired, and sometimes the price of authenticity is everything else you thought you wanted. I told myself I deserved closure, that I deserved to explore my feelings, that I deserved to choose my own path. And maybe I did deserve all of those things, but Lucas deserved better than a wife who would abandon him on their wedding night to chase a ghost from her past. And that truth, more than any legal judgment or social media humiliation, was the one I'd have to live with forever.